The first cranial nerve is the olfactory nerve. Cranial nerve 1 begins with the olfactory neurons in the olfactory mucosa that lines the nasal passages. The axons of these neurons are collected into bundles that make up the olfactory nerves themselves. The olfactory nerves pass upwards through holes in the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone to end in the olfactory bulb, an extension of the forebrain in the anterior cranial fossa. The olfactory nerve carries special afferent fibers from the nose to the brain. Cranial nerves 2, 3, 4, and 6 can be grouped by their functions relating to the eye. The second cranial nerve, the optic nerve, originates from the axons of the retinal ganglion cells of the eye. The optic nerve travels through the optic canal, seen here at the apex of the orbit. Upon traversing the optic canal, the optic nerve ends up in the middle cranial fossa. Here, the right and left optic nerves unite, and fibers from the nasal half of the retinas cross over, forming the optic chiasm, located directly in front of the pituitary gland. From there, the nerve continues moving posteriorly in the skull as the optic tracts. The optic nerve carries special afferent fibers from the eyes to the brain. The third cranial nerve, the oculomotor nerve, is the chief motor nerve to the ocular and extraocular muscles. It originates in the midbrain from the oculomotor nucleus and the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. The oculomotor nerve travels anteriorly through the cavernous sinus to enter the superior orbital fissure. Seen here in the superior view of the skull, and here in the anterior view of the orbit. The oculomotor nerve traverses the superior orbital fissure to end up in the orbit of the eye. In the fissure, the nerve divides into a superior division and an inferior division. The superior division provides somatic motor innervation to the superior rectus and levator palpebrae superioris muscles. The inferior division supplies somatic motor innervation to the medial rectus, the inferior rectus, and the inferior oblique muscles. The inferior division also carries presynaptic parasympathetic fibers to the ciliary ganglion, where they synapse. The postsynaptic parasympathetic fibers course through the axons of the short ciliary nerves, branches of the trigeminal nerve, to reach the ciliary muscles for accommodation of near vision, and the sphincter pupillae muscle for pupillary constriction. Cranial nerve 4, the trochlear nerve, originates from the posterior aspect of the midbrain from the trochlear nucleus. It travels anteriorly through the cavernous sinus before entering the orbit through the superior orbital fissure. The trochlear nerve consists of general somatic efferent fibers that provide motor innervation to the superior oblique muscle, the only extraocular muscle that uses a pulley or trochlea to redirect its line of action. The sixth cranial nerve, the abducens nerve, emerges from the abducens nucleus at the junction of the midbrain and the pons. The abducens nerve has the longest intradural course of all the cranial nerves. It pierces the dura mater, covering the clivus, and continues forward, bending sharply over the crest of the petrous part of the temporal bone, creating a path that looks like this. It then continues anteriorly through the cavernous sinus into the superior orbital fissure, which it traverses to enter the orbit. The abducens nerve consists of general somatic efferent fibers that provide motor innervation to the lateral rectus. In summary, the olfactory nerve passes through holes in the cribriform plate and is responsible for transmitting smell information from the nose to the brain. The optic nerve passes through the optic canal and is responsible for transmitting visual information from the eyes to the brain. And the oculomotor, trochlear, and abducens nerves pass through the superior orbital fissure to provide motor innervation to the ocular and extraocular muscles.